Phoenix gripped the edge of the counter, his knuckles whitening. As the stranger shook the rain from his coat, water droplets scattering like shattered glass across the worn wooden floor. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with ink-black hair slicked back from a face carved from the rugged edges of the Pacific Northwest. His eyes a stormy gray that scanned the room before landing on Phoenix with the precision of a predator spotting prey. Elias, as Phoenix would later learn his name, ordered a black coffee, his voice low and gravelly, carrying the faint drawl of someone who'd grown up chasing waves in California before chasing dreams in the Emerald City. But it wasn't the order that stuck. It was the way Elias lingered, his gaze tracing the lines of Phoenix's face, as if he could see the invisible fractures beneath the skin. Phoenix poured the coffee with hands that felt foreign, his heart pounding in a rhythm he couldn't name, a drumbeat echoing the relentless patter outside. Had always been the quiet one, the guy who blended into the fog of Seattle's perpetual gray, working double shifts at this hole-in-the-wall cafe near Pike Place to pay rent on a cramped studio in Capitol Hill. At 25, he was adrift in a sea of half-finished art degrees and jobs that paid just enough to keep the lights on. His life a series of muted mornings and evenings spent sketching charcoal portraits of strangers on napkins, faces that always turned out more haunted than had intended. Friends called him steady, reliable, the beta through and through, no scent to mark him as anything else, no heat cycles to disrupt the even keel of his days. He envied the omegas he knew, like his roommate Theo, whose jasmine-laced aura turned heads and opened doors, and pitted the alphas, burdened by their own intensity. Phoenix was neither, or so had convinced himself, a neutral force in a world divided by instincts he observed from afar. But Elias changed that fracture line with a single smile, crooked and knowing, as he slid a tip across the counter, his fingers brushing Phoenix's just long enough to send a spark racing up his arm. "Thank you," Phoenix murmured, the words tasting like ash, because what he really wanted to say was, "What are you doing to me?" Elias nodded, pocketing his change, and turned toward the window, where the city lights blurred into neon halos through the downpour. Phoenix watched him, transfixed, as the man sipped his coffee and stared out at the storm, his profile etched against the glass like a promise of chaos. That night, after closing, Phoenix walked home through sheets of rain, his hoodie soaked through, the ghost of that scent clinging to his clothes, seeping into his pores. He collapsed onto his bed, the springs creaking under his weight, and for the first time, he dreamed not of empty sketches, but of hands on his skin, rough and claiming, and a voice whispering his name like a secret finally unearthed. The next morning dawned with the false brightness of a sun fighting through clouds, and Phoenix dragged himself back to Brew Haven, the scent of fresh grounds and steamed milk a familiar anchor. Theo was already up when Head stumbled in at dawn. His roommates sprawled across the couch in their tiny apartment, scrolling through dating apps with a lazy grin, his omega pheromones filling the air with a sweet, teasing haze. "You look like hell," Theo said, not looking up from his phone. "Rough night?" Phoenix shrugged, avoiding his eyes, the lie forming easily on his tongue. "Just the rain." Theo laughed, that light, effortless sound that made Phoenix ache with a familiarity he couldn't place, and tossed him a protein bar from the coffee table cluttered with takeout containers and half-read graphic novels. "Get some food in you before you fade into the wallpaper." At work, the day dragged like wet concrete, customers blurring into a parade of umbrellas and hurried orders, until mid-afternoon when the door chimed again, and there was Elias, dry this time, wearing a leather jacket that hugged his frame like it was tailored for sin. Phoenix's breath caught, a flush creeping up his neck as Elias approached, his scent hitting like a wave, stronger now, laced with something warmer, like embers under snow. "Same as yesterday," Elias said, but his eyes said more, lingering on Phoenix's lips, the curve of his collarbone peeking from his t-shirt. Phoenix nodded, fumbling the pour, a drop splashing onto the counter, and Elias reached out, steadying his hand with a touch that lingered too long, calluses rough against soft skin. "Careful," Elias murmured, his thumb brushing the inside of Phoenix's wrist, right over the pulse that hammered like a confession. They talked then, halting at first, words tumbling out like rain from eaves. Elias was 30, a freelance graphic designer who'd moved to Seattle 6 months ago after a bad breakup in LA. Chasing the anonymity of gray skies and endless coffee, he sketched album covers for indie bands, his style raw and electric, lines that captured the pulse of a city's underbelly. Phoenix admitted to his own aborted art dreams, the sketchbooks gathering dust under his bed, faces he drew to understand the loneliness he couldn't voice. "You've got talent hidden away," Elias said, leaning closer, his knee brushing Phoenix's under the counter. "Don't let it rot." Phoenix laughed it off, but the words lodged in his chest, a seed cracking open in barren soil. By closing time, Elias was still there, nursing a second coffee, the cafe empty save for the hum of the espresso machine and the distant wail of sirens from downtown. "Walk with me?" Elias asked, standing, his height casting a shadow that felt protective rather than looming. Phoenix hesitated, glancing at the clock, the rain starting up again in soft patters against the roof. "Sure," he said, the word slipping out before reason could catch it, and they stepped into the night, shoulders brushing as they navigated the slick streets toward the waterfront. The air was thick with salt and exhaust, fairy horns moaning in the distance, and Phoenix felt the city's pulse sync with his own, erratic and alive. Elias talked about the ocean, how it called to him like an old lover, relentless and unforgiving, and Phoenix listened, his silence a canvas for Elias' words. At the pier, they leaned against the railing, watching ferries cut through black water, lights twinkling like distant stars. "You smell like nothing," Elias said suddenly, turning to face him, his expression unreadable in the sodium glow. "Intriguing." Phoenix stiffened, the old shame rising like bile, the label head worn like a scar. Scentless, invisible, the omega no one could detect, or perhaps not an omega at all. "Just me," he replied, forcing a smile, but Elias stepped closer, his hand cupping Phoenix's jaw, thumb tracing the line of his cheekbone. "No," Elias whispered, his breath warm against Phoenix's ear, leaning in until their foreheads touched. "It's more than that." And then he kissed him, slow and deliberate, lips tasting of coffee and rain, and Phoenix melted into it, the world narrowing to the press of bodies, the first crack in his carefully built walls. When they pulled apart, gasping, Elias' scent enveloped him fully, and for the first time, Phoenix felt something stir inside, faint but insistent, like a whisper of spice blooming in the dark. Phoenix woke to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand, the screen glowing with Theos' name, but his mind was still tangled in the dream of Elias' lips, the way they'd parted at the pier with a promise of coffee not from the cafe, but shared over sketches and stories. He silenced the call, rolling onto his back, staring at the cracked ceiling of his apartment, the faint scent of last night's takeout mingling with the ghost of Elias' pine and salt aura that had followed him home, clinging to his skin like a second shadow. For years, Head navigated this life without markers, no pheromones to betray his desires, no heats to force vulnerability, just the steady hum of existence in a city that swallowed secrets whole. But now, that emptiness felt like a lie, a hollow space waiting to be filled. He showered quickly, the hot water doing little to wash away the flush that crept back at the memory of Elias' hand on his face, the way his gray eyes had darkened with hunger under the pier lights. Dressed in his usual uniform of faded jeans and a thermal shirt layered under his hoodie, Phoenix headed out, the October chill biting through the fabric as he trudged to Brew Haven. Seattle was alive with its morning ritual, joggers braving the drizzle along the Burke-Gilman Trail, baristas calling orders in the shadow of the Space Needle, the air humming with the low buzz of tech workers commuting to Amazon campuses. Phoenix slipped into the rhythm, his sneakers splashing shallow puddles, but his thoughts looped back to Elias, to the kiss that had upended everything. The cafe was bustling when he arrived, the scent of roasted beans cutting through the damp, and Theo was already behind the counter, tying his apron with a flourish, his blonde curls escaping in frizzy rebellion. "You ghosted me last night," Theo accused, hip-checking Phoenix as he clocked in, his omega warmth a comforting contrast to the cold outside. "Bill." Phoenix busied himself with restocking sugars, the packets crinkling under his fingers, but Theos' gaze was relentless, green eyes narrowing behind wire-rimmed glasses. Fine, he muttered, cheeks heating. Met someone. After shift. Theo hooped, drawing stares from the early birds hunched over laptops, and launched into a barrage of questions, his excitement bubbling like over-frothy milk. Is he cute? Tall? Does he smell like trouble? Phoenix dodged the specifics, the word alpha hovering unspoken on his tongue, because how could he explain the pull, the way Elias' presence had ignited something dormant, a flicker of his own scent trying to emerge, faint vanilla and earth, like rain-soaked soil after a drought. Had always been scentless, a medical anomaly the doctors had shrugged off as beta-neutral, but last night, in the haze of that kiss, Head caught a whiff of himself on Elias' jacket, subtle but real, and it terrified him as much as it thrilled. The door chimed mid-rush, and there was Elias, weaving through the crowd with effortless grace. His leather jacket slung over one shoulder, a sketchpad tucked under his arm. Phoenix's heart stuttered, his hands pausing mid-pour, cream swirling into black like a storm cloud. Elias caught his eye, that crooked smile flashing, and slid onto a stool at the counter, ignoring the line. The usual, he said, voice pitched low for Phoenix alone. But his gaze swept the room, assessing alpha instincts on quiet display. As Phoenix handed over the cup, their fingers brushed again, deliberate this time, and Elias leaned in, murmuring, "Tonight, my place. I want to show you my work." The invitation hung between them, charged and electric, and Phoenix nodded, the yes forming in his throat like a vow. The rest of the shift blurred, orders called and filled on autopilot, Theos knowing grins from the espresso machine a constant distraction, until closing time freed him into the twilight, the sky bruising purple over Elliott Bay. Elias was waiting outside, leaning against a weathered brick wall, cigarette smoke curling from his lips in lazy spirals, the ember glowing like a beacon. He stubbed it out as Phoenix approached, flicking the butt into a puddle, and fell into step beside him, their strides sinking without effort. They walked through Capitol Hill, past murals splashed in vibrant defiance on alley walls, the neighborhood pulsing with life, queer bars spilling laughter onto sidewalks, food trucks hawking tacos under strung lights. Elias' place was a converted loft in an old warehouse near the canal, exposed brick and high ceilings, the air thick with the scent of turpentine and ink. He pushed open the door, gesturing Phoenix inside with a sweep of his arm, and the space unfolded like a confession. Canvases leaned against walls, half-finished designs glowing on a dual-monitor setup, a king-sized bed rumpled in the corner, sheets tangled like lovers' limbs. "Make yourself at home," Elias said, tossing his jacket over a chair, and poured 2 glasses of red wine from a bottle on the counter, the liquid deep as blood. They settled on the worn leather couch, sketchpad between them, Elias flipping pages with scarred fingers, each drawing a window into his soul. Jagged cityscapes of LA at dusk, waves crashing against cliffs with feral intensity, portraits of faces twisted in ecstasy or agony. Phoenix traced the lines with his eyes, then his fingers, the paper rough under his touch, and Elias watched him, hunger sharpening his features. "You see it, don't you?" Elias said, voice rough. "The rawness, that's what I chase." Phoenix swallowed, the wine warming his veins, and met his gaze. "Yeah, I see you." The air thickened, charged with unspoken need, and Elias closed the distance, his hand sliding to the nape of Phoenix's neck, pulling him into a kiss that was deeper than the peer's tentative brush, tongues tangling with the urgency of withheld storms. Phoenix arched into it, hands fisting Elias' shirt, the alpha's scent overwhelming, dominant and intoxicating, flooding his senses until his own aroma responded, blooming stronger now, vanilla laced with musk, filling the room like an invitation. Elias growled low in his throat, breaking the kiss to nuzzle Phoenix's neck, inhaling deeply. "Fuck," he breathed, "you smell like home. Like mine." They tumbled to the bed, clothes shedding in a frenzy of zippers and buttons, skin meeting skin in the dim lamplight. Elias' body a map of hard plains and soft yields, scars from surfboard wipeouts tracing his ribs like stories etched in flesh. Phoenix lost himself in the exploration, lips mapping collarbones, teeth grazing hips, Elias' praises murmured against his temple. Good, so good. Let me feel you. When Elias entered him, slow and reverent, Phoenix gasped, the stretch burning sweet. His body yielding in ways head never imagined, instincts awakening like muscles long atrophied. His scent surging in waves that made Elias shudder above him. Afterward, they lay entwined, sweat cooling on tangled sheets, Elias' fingers combing through Phoenix's damp hair. The cities hum a distant lullaby through the windows. Tell me about you, Elias whispered, lips brushing his forehead. The parts you hide. Phoenix hesitated, the vulnerability a knife edge, but the alpha's steady gaze coaxed it out. The childhood in a sleepy Oregon town, parents who loved quietly but fiercely, the realization at puberty that he carried no scent, the doctor's visits that labeled him other, the parade of betas and failed flings that left him hollow. I thought I was broken, he admitted, voice cracking. Until you. Elias pulled him closer, their heartbeats sinking in the quiet. You're not broken. You're waiting. And as sleep claimed them, Phoenix felt the first true heat simmer under his skin. Not the medical kind Head read about, but something primal, calling him home to himself. The weeks blurred into a haze of stolen moments and deepening rhythms. Seattle unfolding around Phoenix and Elias like a canvas they painted together, strokes of laughter and longing against the gray backdrop. Mornings started with texts from Elias, photos of Dawn's sketches or coffee cups etched with inside jokes, pulling Phoenix from sleep with a smile that felt foreign on his lips, genuine and unguarded. Head meet Elias at the cafe during lulls, slipping out back for kisses pressed against the dumpster, hasty and heated, Elias' hands roaming under hoodies, coaxing moans that echoed off brick walls. Nights where there's alone, the loft becoming a sanctuary where Phoenix shed the skin of his old life. His scent evolving, richer now, vanilla deepened with amber, drawing Elias like a moth to flame. Theo noticed first, of course, his omega intuition sharp as a blade. You reek of alpha, he teased one evening, lounging on their kitchen floor amid pizza boxes, his eyes twinkling over a slice loaded with pineapple and jalapenos. Spill the tea, Phoenix. Who's got you glowing like a damn firefly? Phoenix flushed, folding laundry on the couch, the basket overflowing with Elias' t-shirts Head stolen, each one saturated with pine and possession. His name is Elias, he said finally, the admission light as air. He's everything. Theo sat up, serious now, wiping sauce from his chin. Be careful, okay? Alphas like that, they mark territory fast. Phoenix waved it off, but the words lingered, a shadow in the warmth, especially when Elias' scent clung to him like a brand. Turning heads on the bus rides home, strangers' nostrils flaring with subtle curiosity. At work, the changes were subtler but no less profound. His hands steadied on the espresso machine, pours perfect as if guided by instinct, and customers lingered longer, drawn to the newfound aura he couldn't suppress. Even the rain seemed softer, pattering against windows like applause for his awakening. Elias took him everywhere, mapping the city's veins. Hikes up Discovery Park where evergreens whispered secrets, their fingers laced as they crested hills overlooking the sound, salt wind whipping hair into wild halos. Picnics in Gasworks Park, sprawled on checkered blankets amid rusting industrial relics, feeding each other strawberries from farmers' market halls, juice staining lips red as promises. One evening, under the Fremont Bridge with its troll sculpture grinning from shadows, Elias pulled out a ring, not gold or diamond, but a simple band of hammered silver etched with waves, slipping it onto Phoenix's finger with eyes fierce and tender. Not claiming, he said, kissing the knuckle. Just. Phoenix's throat tightened, the metal cool against his skin. A tether in the uncertainty, and he pulled Elias down, their bodies merging in the grass, hidden by twilight, the troll's stone eyes winking approval. But beneath the romance, fissures formed, hairline cracks in the foundation. Phoenix's heat's symptoms crept in unannounced, a low simmer in his belly during shifts, making him flush and fidget, snapping at Theo over nothing. He researched late at night, Elias asleep beside him, scrolling forums on Scentless Omega's late bloomers, stories of awakenings triggered by faded matches, the science murky as Seattle's fog. Am I really an Omega? He whispered one dawn, tracing Elias' sleeping face, the alpha's brow furrowed even in repose, as if guarding dreams from intruders. Elias stirred, pulling him close. You're mine, he murmured, half asleep, the words a bomb and a chain. The conflict ignited at a gallery opening in Pioneer Square. Elias' work on display amid polished crowds sipping Chardonnay. Abstract pieces pulsing with electric blues and violent reds. Phoenix stood beside him in borrowed slacks and a button-down that smelled of Elias' closet, the fabric hugging his frame, accentuating the subtle curves his body now embraced. Alphas circled like sharks, their scents clashing in the air. But one lingered too long. A tall blonde named Marcus with a gallery owner's smirk, his hand clapping Elias' shoulder with proprietary ease. Old friend from LA, Elias explained later, over late-night ramen in a hole in the wall near the docks. But Phoenix caught the undercurrent, the way Marcus' eyes had appraised him, nostrils flaring at his emerging scent. You okay? Elias asked, chopsticks pausing mid-air, steam curling between them like questions. Phoenix nodded, forcing a bite, the noodles slick and salty, but jealousy coiled in his gut, unfamiliar and sharp. Just tired, he lied, and that night in the loft, their lovemaking was fervent, almost punishing, Elias pinning him to the mattress, thrusts deep and claiming, drawing cries from Phoenix that echoed off beams. Afterward, Elias traced the marks on his hips, bruises blooming like ink spills. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said softly. But Phoenix shook his head, burying his face in the alpha's chest. It's not that. Everything feels too much. The turning point came mid-November, leaves carpeting sidewalks in crimson decay, when Phoenix's first true heat crashed over him like a tidal wave. It started subtle, a warmth pooling during a morning run along the waterfront, sweat beading despite the chill, his scent spiking sweet and needy, turning joggers' heads. By afternoon at the cafe, he was trembling, gripping the counter as waves of need pulsed through him, vision blurring with the intensity. Theo sent him home early, concern etching his features, and Phoenix stumbled into the apartment, collapsing on the couch, phone clutched like a lifeline. Elias arrived in a frenzy, the door banging open, his own scent alpha-sharp with worry, eyes wild as he scooped Phoenix up, carrying him to bed. Shoo! I've got you, he soothed, stripping clothes with efficient tenderness, cool cloths on fevered skin, water sipped from shared glasses. The heat ravaged him, body arching for touch, instincts demanding submission, and Elias gave it all, hands and mouth worshipping every inch, nodding deep as Phoenix shattered around him, cries muffled in pillows. It lasted days, a cocoon of sweat and sighs, Elias barely leaving his side, ordering groceries via app, sketching Phoenix's flushed form in stolen moments. When it broke, Phoenix emerged raw and reborn, curled against Elias' side, the alpha's arm heavy across his waist. That was intense, he whispered, voice hoarse, and Elias chuckled, low and rumbling. Welcome to the club, Omega. The word landed like a spark on dry tinder, igniting pride and fear in equal measure. Phoenix turned, searching his face. You knew? Elias nodded, thumb stroking his cheek. From the first scent, faint but there, beautiful. In that vulnerability, Phoenix bared more, confessing the years of doubt, the isolation of being scentless in a world that scented everything. Elias listened, silent and steady, then shared his own scars. The ex in LA who'd used him for connections, leaving him jagged and wary, Alpha's reputation as a heartbreak artist preceding him like a storm cloud. But you, Elias said, you're different. You see me. They made love again. Slow this time, bodies moving like a tide, and Phoenix felt whole, his instincts no longer hidden, but harmonizing with the man who'd awakened them. Yet as winter loomed, the cracks widened, whispers of doubt in quiet hours, Elias' phone buzzing late with Marcus' name, texts deleted too quickly. Phoenix pushed it down, clinging to the ring on his finger, the scent that now marked him as claimed, but the harmony frayed at the edges, waiting for the storm to break. December draped Seattle in a shroud of mist and twinkling lights, holiday markets blooming along First Avenue with the scent of mulled wine and evergreen boughs. But for Phoenix, the season carried an undercurrent of unease, like the calm before the mountains roar. His heat had reshaped him, body softer in the hips, skin more sensitive to Elias' touch. His scent a constant bloom that turned casual glances into lingering stares on public transit. He wore it like a badge now, vanilla amber trailing him through Brew Haven shifts, drawing tips and compliments from regulars, Theo dubbing him the cafe's secret weapon with a wink and a nudge. Life with Elias felt like a melody. Their days a duet of shared sketches and midnight confessions. But the notes soured in the silences, when Elias would stare at his phone with a furrow between his brows, or vanish for hours on client calls that left him distracted, distant. They decorated the loft together one rainy afternoon, stringing fairy lights along exposed pipes, the glow casting golden halos on Elias' inked arms as he balanced on a ladder, cursing softly when tinsel tangled his fingers. Phoenix laughed from below, handing up ornaments, glass baubles catching the light like captured stars. And for a moment, it was perfect, domestic in its simplicity, the air rich with hot chocolate and their mingled scents. Elias descended, pulling him into a kiss that tasted of peppermint, hands sliding under Phoenix's sweater to trace the dip of his spine. Stay forever, Elias murmured against his lips, and Phoenix melted, whispering yes, even as a pang twisted in his chest, the ring on his finger suddenly heavy. The gallery show in Pioneer Square had planted the seed, Marcus' shadow lingering like smoke, and Phoenix couldn't shake it. The way the blonde alpha had leaned too close to Elias during the toast, murmuring about old times over champagne flutes. Head brushed it off then, chalking it up to insecurity, the fresh bloom of his omega instincts making him clingy, needy, but now, with holiday parties looming, the doubt festered. Theo invited him to a queer night at Numos, the club's basement pulsing with bass and bodies, and Phoenix went alone. Elias tied up with a deadline, his text apologetic. Rain check, love. Kill it tonight. The club was a fever dream, strobe lights slicing through haze, sweat-slick skin pressing close on the dance floor, omegas and alphas mingling in a symphony of scents that overwhelmed Phoenix's newly attuned senses. He sipped gin and tonic at the bar, the lime bite grounding him, when Marcus appeared, materializing from the crowd like a ghost, his cologne sharp citrus cutting through the melee. Phoenix, he drawled, voice smooth as aged whiskey, clapping a hand on his shoulder. Didn't expect to see you here. Elias around? The casual mention twisted the knife, and Phoenix stiffened, forcing a smile. Working late. Marcus nodded, signaling the bartender for 2 shots, sliding one over with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. To new friends, he toasted, and Phoenix downed it, the tequila burning a path to his stomach, loosening the tension in his shoulders. They talked shop, Marcus regaling tales of LA scenes, A-list clients and wild after-parties. His laugh booming over the music, drawing envious glances. He's talented, you're Elias, Marcus said, leaning in, breath hot on Phoenix's ear. But he always did chase the next high. Phoenix's grip tightened on his glass, the words slithering under his skin. But he laughed it off, excusing himself to the bathroom, splashing water on his face in the dim mirror, hazel eyes staring back haunted. Back on the floor, Marcus found him again, pulling him into the throng with an arm around his waist, bodies grinding to the rhythm, the alpha's touch bold, possessive. Phoenix pulled away, heart racing, but the seed of curiosity took root, whispers of what if Elias was just another conquest, his affections fleeting as Seattle's weather. He texted Elias a blurry selfie, lights blurring behind him, caption, "Missing you," but the reply came hours later, curt, "Glad you're having fun. Home safe." Christmas Eve dawned crisp, the city blanketed in rare snow, flakes drifting past the loft's windows like errant thoughts. Elias had planned a quiet night, tree aglow in the corner, takeout from a dim-sum spot near Chinatown. But tension simmered as they ate cross-legged on the floor, fortune cookies cracked open to half-hearted readings. "You've been distant," Phoenix said finally, pushing dumplings around his plate, the steam fading like their ease. Elias sighed, rubbing his temples, sketchpad forgotten beside him. Deadlines, babe. The client's ruthless. But Phoenix pressed, voice steady despite the tremor. Or is it Marcus? The name hung heavy, and Elias' eyes flashed, alpha temper flaring brief as a struck match. What the hell? He's just a contact. Old news. Phoenix stood, pacing the rug, his scent spiking sour with hurt. Then why the secrets? The late calls, the deleted texts. Elias rose, closing the distance, hands on Phoenix's arms, grip firm but not bruising. Trust me, he said, voice low, pulling him into an embrace that Phoenix resisted at first, then sank into, tears pricking his eyes. I'm sorry, Elias whispered, kissing his temple. I love you. The words were a lifeline, and they made love by the tree, slow and reconnecting, bodies entwined in the colored glow. Phoenix's cries muffled in Elias' neck, his scent enveloping them like forgiveness. But the new year brought the storm. January's gales howled off the sound, uprooting trees in Green Lake Park, and Phoenix's body betrayed him again. A mini-heat simmering unbidden during a shift, making him dizzy behind the counter. Theo covered, sending him to the loft early, but Elias wasn't there, his truck gone from the alley spot. Phoenix waited, curled on the couch with a blanket, scrolling old texts, the silver ring glinting mockingly. Hours ticked by, worry curdling to anger, until the door opened at midnight, Elias stumbling in, reeking of whiskey and citrus. Where were you? Phoenix demanded, standing, voice cracking. Elias blinked, swaying slightly, his gray eyes bloodshot. Networking. Marcus set up a meet with a big label. Phoenix's world tilted, the pieces slotting cruelly. The late nights, the distractions, the scent clinging to Elias' collar like evidence. With him, all this time, Elias reached for him, slurring denials, but Phoenix recoiled, the alpha's touch now poison. Get out, he whispered, the words steel in his throat, and Elias did, door slamming like a guillotine, leaving Phoenix in the cold glow of the tree, lights mocking his shattered illusions. He called Theo at dawn, sobbing into the phone, the snow melting into slush outside, mirroring the thaw of his trust. Pack a bag, Theo said, voice fierce. You're staying here. Phoenix did, stuffing clothes into a duffel, the loft echoing empty as he left the key on the counter, his scent fading from the sheets like a ghost. The drive to Theos in Belltown was a blur, wipers slashing rain, and when he collapsed on the guest bed, the heat crested fully, racking him with shivers, instincts screaming for the alpha who'd abandoned them. Theo dosed him with suppressants from his stash, holding his hand through the fever, murmuring comforts about strength, about omegas who'd walked this path before. But as the waves crashed, Phoenix dreamed of Elias, of pine and betrayal, waking to a resolve hardening in his chest. He would survive this, scent or no scent, awakened instincts be damned. February's chill seeped into Phoenix's bones like regret, the city's gray skies pressing down as he holed up in Theos' apartment, a sublet in Belltown's shadow, where the hum of traffic from the viaduct drowned out the ache in his chest. The betrayal replayed in loops. Elias' face in the loft's dim light, whiskey on his breath, citrus tainting the air, Marcus' name a specter between them. Phoenix had blocked his number after the first barrage of texts, apologies laced with excuses, each one a fresh cut, so he deleted them unread, focusing instead on the raw wound of his instincts, the omega in him keening for a bond now severed. Suppressants dulled the edge, pills swallowed with black coffee, but dreams haunted him, Elias nodding deep, scent enveloping, only to dissolve into Marcus' smirk, leaving him gasping awake, sheets twisted and damp. Theo was a lifeline, his omega energy a steady warmth, dragging Phoenix to yoga classes and studios overlooking the bay, where downward dogs stretched out the knots of tension, instructors' voices soft mantras amid incense haze. You're stronger than this, Theo said over post-class smoothies at a juice bar near the market, kale and ginger biting through the fog in Phoenix's head. He nodded, sipping slowly, the silver ring still on his finger a talisman he couldn't remove, its waves etched deeper now with memory. Work helped too, Shifts at Brew Haven a rhythm of grounds and steam, customers' faces a blur that kept his mind occupied. Though his scent, subdued but present, drew sympathetic glances from regulars who'd pieced together his story from Theos' not-so-subtle hints. One afternoon, mid-pour, the door chimed, and there was Marcus, bold as brass, sliding onto a stool with a smile that curdled Phoenix's stomach. Heard about the drama, he said, voice oily smooth, ordering an Americano with a wink. Elias can be impulsive. Phoenix's hand shook, coffee sloshing, and he set it down hard, hazel eyes flashing. What do you want? Marcus leaned in, elbows on the counter, his alpha scent aggressive, probing. Just checking on you. He's a mess without you, you know. Begging for second chances. Phoenix laughed, bitter and sharp, wiping the spill with a rag that smelled of bleach. Good for him. Tell him to stay away. But Marcus lingered, dropping crumbs of Elias' life. The canceled gigs, the benders at dive bars in Georgetown, sketches piling up unfinished, half-burned in the loft fireplace. It was meant to be networking, Marcus claimed, the night of the betrayal a slip, too much scotch and old habits. But Phoenix saw through it, the manipulation in the alpha's easy charm, the way he appraised Phoenix's form, lingering on the curve of his neck where Elias' mark had faded to a ghost bruise. Get out, Phoenix said, voice low and even, nodding to the door, and Marcus went, but not without a parting shot. You'll crawl back. Omegas always do. The words festered, fueling nightmares where he did return. On knees in the loft, begging for scraps of affection. His scent blooming needy and ignored. He threw himself into art instead. Dust-covered sketchbooks hauled from storage, pencils scratching feverishly on Theos' kitchen table, portraits of Elias' face morphing from adoration to anguish, lines jagged as his heart. Theo encouraged it, framing one a stormy profile against rainy windows on their fridge, titled Awakening, the irony not lost. Phoenix's sense stabilized, less volatile without Elias' trigger, but the void ached, instincts whispering of loss, of a bond half-formed, leaving him adrift in a sea of what-ifs. Spring teased early, crocuses pushing through soil in Volunteer Park, and Phoenix ventured out. Solo hikes up to the reservoirs, water glittering under tentative sun, the solitude a balm. He met others there, a running group of queer folks, betas and omegas mostly, sharing stories over post-run brunches at hidden cafes in the U District. One, a lanky beta named Riley with freckles and a photographer's eye, became a friend. His easy banter a counter to Theos' intensity. Lunches stretching into afternoons at pie shops where cherry fillings stained fingers red. Riley saw him, truly, without the haze of alpha dominance, and Phoenix felt a spark, tentative, human, not instinct-driven. But Elias haunted the edges, a shadow at markets where Phoenix shopped for fresh produce, or in the cafe's playlist, indie tracks they'd danced to now twisting the knife. One evening, walking home from Riley's after a movie night, laughter fading into the dusk, Phoenix turned a corner and there he was, Elias leaning against a lamppost near Theos' building, gaunt and unshaven, eyes hollowed by weeks of torment. Phoenix froze, duffel slipping from his shoulder, the alpha's scent hitting like a punch, pine raw and desperate, laced with self-loathing. Please, Elias rasped, stepping forward, hands raised in surrender. Just talk. Phoenix's instincts surged, omega pull warring with the hurt, his body leaning before his mind caught up. No, he said, but his voice wavered, feet rooted. Elias closed the gap, voice breaking. I fucked up. Marcus was nothing, a mistake, old poison. I love you, Phoenix. Always have. The plea cracked something in him, tears welling, and he let Elias pull him into an alley, away from streetlights, their bodies crashing together in a kiss that tasted of salt and ruin. Hands frantic under clothes, Elias not swelling against his thigh, promises gasped into skin. They tumbled into Theos' spare room that night, the alpha's touch reverent, mapping scars of absence, Phoenix yielding despite the screams in his head, heat coiling low as Elias entered him. Slow and sobbing, I need you, whispered like prayer. It was ecstasy and agony, release crashing in waves, but dawn brought clarity. Phoenix slipping from the bed, dressing quietly as Elias slept, the ring twisting on his finger like a noose. He left a note. "This isn't healing. It's habit. Goodbye." Theo found him on the fire escape at sunrise, coffee steaming in mugs, the city waking below in horns and gulls' cries. "You did good," Theo said, squeezing his hand, and Phoenix nodded, the weight lifting fractionally. Though the crisis loomed, his instincts fracturing further, demanding confrontation before surrender. He called a therapist that week, a soft-spoken beta in an office overlooking the locks, sessions unpacking the layers. The scentless years as armor, the awakening as vulnerability, the betrayal as catalyst. Progress was slow, tears shed over tissues, but each word rebuilt him, brick by instinctual brick. Yet the climax brewed, Elias texts escalating to voicemails, voice raw with alpha desperation, and one night, after a group run where Riley's hand brushed his, innocent and warm, Elias appeared at the cafe's closing, eyes feral, scent storming the air. "You're moving on?" he snarled, spotting the laughter lines around Phoenix's eyes. With him, Phoenix faced him, steady for the first time, the counter between them a barrier and a bridge. "I'm surviving," he said. "Without you." Elias lunged, not in violence, but collapse, knees hitting tile, sobs racking his frame as patrons gawked. Phoenix knelt, instinct overriding, hands in his hair, the touch of farewell. "Go heal yourself," he whispered, and Elias nodded, broken, staggering out into the rain, leaving Phoenix to lock up, the door chime a final knell. March's tentative blooms wilted under late frosts, mirroring the frost in Phoenix's heart as he navigated the aftermath. Seattle's streets a labyrinth of memories, every corner echoing with Elias' ghost. The confrontation at the cafe had been a dam breaking, emotions flooding out in the alpha's tears, but it left Phoenix unmoored, his omega instincts a riot of confusion, craving connection even as his mind built walls of resolve. Therapy sessions intensified, the therapist's office a haven of potted ferns and diffused light, where he unpacked the betrayal not as singular sin, but a pattern. Elias chasing highs, Marcus a symptom of deeper wounds. Phoenix's late bloom sent a trigger for the alpha's savior complex. "You deserve reciprocity," the therapist said, voice gentle, and Phoenix journaled it nightly, pages filling with affirmations scrawled in looping script, his sketches evolving from haunted portraits to abstract swirls of color, chaos yielding to calm. Theo threw him a rebirth party, small and fierce, in their living room strung with paper lanterns, friends from the running group crowding the space with laughter and craft beers. Riley's camera flashing candid shots. Phoenix danced, hips swaying to lo-fi beats, sweat beading on his brow, his scent light and self-possessed, drawing smiles rather than stares. Riley pulled him aside mid-song, freckled hand on his arm, eyes earnest under the fringe of red hair. "You look free," he said, and Phoenix felt it. A spark not of heat but of possibility, leaning in for a kiss that was soft, exploratory, tasting of IPA and new beginnings. It ended gently, friends cheering from the couch, but the intimacy lingered, a bridge to normalcy. Yet crisis crested unbidden, Phoenix's body rebelling in a suppressed heat that hit during a solo exhibit at a community gallery in Fremont. His sketches on walls under spotlights, raw exposures of his journey. Scentless voids in charcoal, awakenings in vibrant oils. Crowds milled, wine glasses clinking, and pride swelled as strangers murmured appreciations. But midway through, the wave crashed, nausea roiling, skin flushing hot under his linen shirt. He stumbled to the back alley, gasping against cool brick, instincts screaming for Elias, the bond half-tied pulling like phantom strings, his scent spiking desperate, vanilla twisted with despair. Elias found him there, as if summoned by the call, materializing from shadows, months sober now, his frame leaner, eyes clear but shadowed with regret. "I felt it," he said, voice rough, stepping close but not touching. "Your heat, even from across town." Phoenix slid down the wall, knees to chest, tears streaking his face, the vulnerability a chasm. "Why now?" he choked. "Why you?" Elias knelt, scent steady pine, tempered with mint from gum chewed against cravings. Because I'm still yours. And you're mine. But Phoenix shook his head, the therapist's words anchoring him. Not like this. Not broken. They talked through the night, Allie forgotten as heat ebbed under suppressants Theo fetched, words pouring like rain. Elias confessions of therapy, meetings in church basements near the locks, confronting his patterns of sabotage. Marcus cut off like a tumor. I was scared, Elias admitted, hands trembling as he lit a cigarette, the flame dancing in his eyes. Of how much I needed you, of failing that. Phoenix listened, heart fracturing anew, the omega in him yearning to forgive, to knot and heal, but the man had become demanded more. Show me, he said finally, standing on shaky legs. Words aren't enough. The healing began fractured, tentative coffees at neutral grounds, a park bench in Cal Anderson overlooking the reservoir, ducks quacking indifference as they shared sandwiches. Conversations laced with silences heavy but honest. Elias brought sketches, not of chaos, but clarity. Portraits of Phoenix from memory, eyes fierce with inner light, captioned with dates of their milestones. Phoenix reciprocated with journal pages, read aloud in quivering voice, vulnerabilities laid bare. Intimacy rebuilt slow, hands held across tables, kisses chased on cheeks after walks, the pull of instincts a undercurrent they navigated with care. Suppressants a buffer until trust solidified. Riley faded gracefully, a friend now, his camera capturing their progress in group hikes, candid frames of tentative smiles under evergreens. Theo watched warily, protective glares over dinner plates, but softened when Elias helped paint their apartment. Sleeves rolled on tattooed arms, laughter echoing as paint splattered faces. Phoenix's scent steadied, blooming pure when Elias near, no longer tainted by fear, and one evening in the loft, reclaimed now with fresh sheets and cleared canvases. They crossed the line, bodies joining not in frenzy, but reverence, Elias entering slow, eyes locked. I love you whispered with each thrust, Phoenix's cries a release of held breath. But crisis lingered in shadows, a final test when Marcus resurfaced, emailing Elias a job offer from LA, fat paycheck and prestige, the temptation a siren call. Elias showed Phoenix the screen, hands steady, waiting. Go if you need to, Phoenix said, voice even though terror clawed his gut. But come back changed. Elias deleted it, pulling him close, the choice a vow. Stay. Spring fully arrived then, cherry blossoms shedding petals like confetti along University Avenue, and Phoenix felt the shift. Instincts harmonized, not dominated. His omega self a strength, not a chain. They planned a trip, rode to the Oregon coast, waves to wash clean the past. And in the interim, Phoenix's art sold. A gallery in Soto snapping up pieces, validation blooming alongside his scent. The journey wasn't linear, setbacks and arguments over old hurts. Nights spent separate to breathe, but each return fortified, love tempered in fire. By May, under a sky finally blue, Phoenix stood on the loft's balcony, Elias' arm around his waist, city sprawling below in vibrant sprawl. You awakened me, Phoenix said, turning to kiss him, deep and sure. But I saved myself. Elias smiled, crooked as ever, eyes soft. And he'll spend forever thanking you for it. Summer unfurled in Seattle's rare heat, asphalt shimmering under relentless sun. The city shedding its gray skin for festivals and ferry rides. Phoenix and Elias weaving through it all like threads in a renewed tapestry. The coastal trip had been a baptism. Highway 101 curving along cliffs where waves hurled themselves at rock. Their rented cabin a weathered shack near Cannon Beach. Salt air thick as they walked Haystack Rock at low tide. Tide pools teeming with starfish like hidden jewels. They made love on driftwood-strewn sand, bodies gilded by sunset, Elias not locking them in waves of aftershocks. Phoenix's scent mingling with sea brine, instincts sated in the crash of surf. Back in the city, they built on it. Routines deepened. Morning runs along the waterfront, hands brushing at finish lines. Evening sketches side by side, pencils whispering over paper. Ideas exchanged like breaths. Phoenix quit Brew Haven on a whim, buoyed by gallery sales. landing a part-time gig at an art supply store in Ballard. Shelves stocked with pigments that mirrored his evolving palette, from muted earths to bold primaries. The freedom tasted like possibility, shifts ending with time for classes at the community college. Figure drawing where models posed under skylights, bodies a study in vulnerability he now embraced. Elias thrived too, commissions rolling in from ethical clients, his style maturing, less raw fury, more layered grace, pieces exhibited in a group show at the Fry Art Museum, Phoenix's hand in his at the opening, pride swelling as critics nodded approval. Conflicts arose, inevitable as rain, small fractures tested in the forge. Elias' temper flaring over a missed deadline, Phoenix withdrawing into silence, instincts prickling with old fears. They learned the dance, arguments aired over walks in Discovery Park, words chosen careful as brushstrokes, apologies sealed with touches that reignited rather than consumed. Therapy continued, separate and joint. A beta counselor in a sunlit office near the market, unpacking alpha-omega dynamics with humor and insight, laughter punctuating tears. "You two are rewriting the script," she said once, and Phoenix believed it, the human in him as vital as the omega, love a choice renewed daily. Theo found his own rhythm, dating a soft-spoken beta barista from across the hall, double dates at food trucks in the ID, steaming bao and craft sodas shared under string lights. Riley tagged along sometimes, his photography capturing their circle in frames of joy. Group picnics in golden gardens, frisbees arcing over dunes, scents blending in harmonious chaos. Phoenix's family visited once, parents driving up from Oregon in their old Subaru, eyes widening at his loft life, the alpha on his arm, but hugs were warm, questions gentle, acceptance blooming like the rhododendrons in their backyard garden. "You look happy," his mom said, squeezing his hand, and he was the scentless boy reborn in full color. Autumn returned, leaves turning fire along Ravenna Ravine, and with it, Phoenix's second heat, anticipated now, not ambush. They prepared, the loft stocked with hydration and distractions. Elias sent blockers off, his presence a steady anchor as waves built. It was transformative, Phoenix riding the crests with agency, directing Elias' hands, voices guiding rhythms, nodding a mutual surrender rather than submission. In the quiet after, bodies lax and sated, Phoenix traced Elias' scars, whispering futures. A studio space shared, trips to the southwest for desert inspirations, perhaps a commitment etched deeper than silver. The human depth emerged in crises averted, like when Elias' sponsor called mid-relapse scare. Voice slurred from a bar in Pioneer, and Phoenix drove through pouring rain, pulling him into the truck, holding him through shakes on the couch. No judgment, only presence. Vulnerability reciprocal, Phoenix breaking down over a rejected piece. Canvas slashed in frustration. Elias gathering the shreds, helping reassemble into something fiercer. They volunteered too, at a youth center in the Central District, mentoring queer artists, Phoenix sharing his late bloom story to wide-eyed teens, Elias demonstrating digital tools with patient hands. In their faces, Phoenix saw his younger self, scentless and searching, and the value crystallized. Awakening wasn't just personal, but communal, instincts harnessed for connection, not isolation. Winter's solstice brought the peak, a quiet ceremony on the balcony. City lights a constellation below, Elias on one knee with a new ring, gold this time, simple band engraved with their scents intertwined. Pine and vanilla, waves and earth. "Marry me not as claim, but as equals," he said, voice steady, eyes brimming. Phoenix pulled him up, kissing through tears, yes, a word heavy with meaning, the yes to all of it. The hidden years, the awakening, the betrayals forged into strength. Years folded forward in their telling, but in that moment, under stars peeking through clouds, Phoenix knew the truth. He had been scentless not from lack, but latency, waiting for the alpha who would coax forth not just instincts, but the full spectrum of self. Love, in its American grit and grace, was no fairy tale, but a daily act, romantic in its rawness, dramatic in its depths, healing in its humanity. They stood entwined, sense mingling as one, the city their witness, ready for whatever storms came next.